So welcome back, everybody. This is another month with Young Realty Academy and McLean International. We're happy to welcome back Amy with us. She wasn't with us last month, but she's back this month. And what we're going to be doing is talking about the year 2014. We're going to be talking about next year's business plan. We're going to be talking about how to take what you've done in 2013 and translate that into bigger and better results for 2014. So without further ado, here's welcome. Please welcome Amy.
Well, thank you, Stephen. It's great to be back with you guys.
Absolutely.
Very excited about this topic. It's one of my favorite things to cover because it is the foundation, cornerstone of successful business, no matter what industry you're in. And what I found, Stephen, and I know that you have found the same, is that when people enter the real estate industry, typically they're great at sales, but they're not great at business planning. And so this, I think, is the key to really helping people anchor their success. Now, when we think in terms of business planning in the real estate industry, what I most often hear from people when I say, what's your business plan for the coming year? I hear one of two numbers. I either hear a total production goal in terms of revenue or a production goal in terms of transactions. And certainly both of those things are very important in rounding out a very robust business plan. However, most people think that is the business plan. And so I really want to get into the 8 facets of the business today. And certainly we're going to discuss financial as a part of that. So let's just talk about what those 8 facets are. Financial, the first facet, is what we just talked about, and going deeper with that. So coming up with the numbers that are going to guide the rest of the business plan. How many transactions are we going to do? What sort of revenue is that going to generate for us? And then what expenses does that allow if we hit that goal? We're going to spend quite a bit of time on the call today on that. And there are 7 other facets of business that I feel are important that we at McLean cover with all of our clients that need to be included in that business plan. So the second is marketing. Once you determine how much business you want to do, then you need to determine how you're going to market to generate that business. And I like to refer to it as silos of business when we determine the different areas. I think I've mentioned that term to the group before. What are the silos of business that are going to generate that revenue for you? And then what's the specific marketing under each one of those silos that's going to get the phone to ring or the internet leads to come in so that you can have that success. Our third category is staff and team. Now, for some people, this is literally hiring employees. And for a lot of people, your team involves everything from some virtual assistants, maybe some help you're getting in the office. It could be people that you're working with on inspections. Your team is really bigger than the staff. It's anyone that's helping you be successful at closing transactions. And then number 4 facet of the business, sales systems. How are you negotiating? How are you getting people to make a buying decision? Those are parts of your sales systems. And then the actual system that supports getting that transaction from an accepted offer to closing, or getting that listing from being listed to the accepted offer. What are the support systems that go into place there? Number 5, the 5th facet that we talk about when we look at a whole business plan, is customer retention. You know, a lot of people are great through the transaction, and then it falls apart after you've closed. The relationship falls apart. And so it's very important to have your plan in place of how you're going to stay in touch with people. Number 6 is services. And certainly we're all in the business of providing the service of helping people buy and sell real estate. Are there other services that you offer as a business, or sub-services of that broad category? And we'll talk about those. Technology, the 7th facet, is pretty straightforward. What technology have you chosen to implement in your business to help any of these other facets? And then the final one, the 8th facet, is your actual physical office, whether that's in a brick and mortar building, that's working from home. What is the environment you've created for yourself and potentially your team members that is supporting them being successful? So before we jump into those facets, Stephen, I'd like to address the cycle of success, because I think even if people are able to complete all 8 of these facets in the initial business planning phase, it's important that the business plan continue to be a vibrant living document. And a lot of people, I think, once they have that plan out of the way, they say, great, I've planned for next year, and it goes in the drawer, and they don't look at it again until they're planning for the coming year. So when we talk about the cycle of success, we set the goals, and just follow me clockwise around this graphic, if you will. So off to the top right then, we set the goals. So we say we want to do 50 transactions next year. The next step is we've got to look at what needs to change in order for that to become a reality. If we keep doing what we've been doing, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting, right? So we identify what that change needs to be. And then we plan, okay, now that we know what we need to change to get to that number, let's develop the plan that's going to get us there. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today with each of the 8 facets. Now, once we have the plan, we have to take action, right? And once the action happens, there needs to be accountability to support the action continuing. If things aren't working or they're not working as well as we'd like them to, then we need to make an adjustment. That adjustment may lead to a new goal or a revision of the goal, and that's where we experience success, and then we go through the cycle again. All right, so let's talk about then that first facet, and this is a big part of the whole business planning process for all of us. Looking at your financials, and that's not just coming up with those 2 initial numerical goals. We're going to go a lot deeper than that. Financials are the foundation to your freedom. So first of all, if you've been in this business more than the current year, more than the current month, you have some results. And when you know your numbers, that's when you get empowered to be able to make good decisions. So we're going to look at results from previous years, because that history is going to give us some indication of things that we can do in terms of projections. With your financial projection, we're talking about your individual financial projection. So what is it that you want to accomplish based on your previous year's results? Let's talk about, can we take that and make a good, educated estimate about what we're going to do for this year? So for example, let's say year over year I experience a 15% growth in my business. Is it realistic for me to come in and say, this year I'm going to triple, if for the past 5 years I've been able to increase 15%? Well, that's going to take a very different way of doing business than what you've been doing. And it's not to say it can't be done. I will say, if you're going to make that dramatic of a change, you're going to need to expect to invest in your business and make a lot of changes. So let's just walk through an example if we could. Let's say that you've been averaging 30 transactions a year, and that's been for the past 4 or 5 years. And this year, you just say, this is the year I want to grow. Let's say you decide you want to increase that by 50% and go to 45 transactions. We've got to look at, what have you been spending expenses as a percentage of sales? So what did you spend on average the last 5 years? Now here's, Stephen, I don't know if you encounter this, but I encounter this a lot. Here's where people start to run into challenges, because maybe they haven't done a really good job of tracking in the past. So what do we do with that? How do we plan around not having tracked well in the past? Well, first we start with a commitment to do a better job at tracking right now, yes?
Yeah.
So what are you using for software? And this would fall in your technology category. What are you using for software to track those business expenses? Also, what are you using from a system standpoint to track your business? And so, we'll talk about this a little bit more in one of the other facets. How do you know where your business has come from? How are you tracking that? And even at the very basic level, when I take a call in or I have an internet lead, am I tracking just in a spreadsheet or on a sheet of paper taped to my desk? These are the categories where I get business from, and put a hash mark next to the one where I got that piece of business from. Why is this important? Because when we know where the business is coming from, then we can direct our marketing efforts to those most effective sources. We all have a limited amount of resources. So you've got to make smart decisions about where you spend your money. And if you don't know if something has been successful, then you can't make a good decision about whether to keep it or get rid of it. And let me give you a real tangible example of that. So I have a client in Indiana who has been tracking her business sources, and she's been spending a significant amount of money on their local Homes and Lifestyles magazine. And they can't track a single piece of business to that publication. Now, she has a very large listing inventory, so she was running up to 16 pages in that Homes and Lifestyles to cover all of her listing inventory and have it be represented. She went a year ago to just a 2-page ad that features her services and directs people to her website for the most current listing inventory available. And she's had an increase in the number of transactions she can directly attribute to the publication at a fraction of the cost. We're talking an eighth of the expense that she had before. So this is where the tracking and the knowing your numbers really starts to pay off.
Yeah, so Amy, if I could just interject real quick.
Please do.
So with the tracking, a lot of the time tracking doesn't really come into play until you look back in review, right? So like the instantaneous day of, like, where do you call me from? Was it from an ad? Was it from my email? Was it from a website? Whatever it was. That, snapshot of the day doesn't really necessarily tell you the story. Okay, so going forward for 2014, you really have to look at all of 2013 in review, if not go back from previous years, just like this client did in Indiana. But the important thing to note, especially for new people starting out, like if you don't have the experience, if you don't have the months, if you don't have the leads coming in, and you can't really track anything, it's important to go back and say, okay, who is being successful in real estate right now? And then at that point in time, you'd have to say, from the point where they're being successful, what are they doing? Are they doing website? Are they doing, direct marketing? Are they doing, open houses? Have they advertised in Home Style magazine, whatever it is? So you have to look at, if your business is very, very new and you're say, like, quote unquote, a rookie in the business, okay, what are the successful people doing? Because most of the successful people track their numbers every single year. So if you can't figure it out yourself, it's important to look at what are the successful realtors doing in the business.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm glad you brought this up. If you are that rookie, go find someone to be your business planning mentor. Most of these successful folks are willing to share their mistakes so that you don't have to make them. They don't want you to have to suffer through what they did. And so they'll talk percentages with you. Don't expect them to give you their actual numbers. Some of them might, but they'll talk percentages with you and say, your marketing expense should be 10 to 11% of your total gross revenue generated, for example. They might tell you that. In a growth mode, it's going to be 12, and in a maintenance mode, it's going to be 8, based on their history. So take that time to seek out that mentor and get that advice. And I know, Stephen, that you've helped a lot of people with that.
Yeah, we're actually developing a new program right now. It's called Follow Me to a Million. And when I first started in the business, my goal was to sort of just be like, everybody else, the top 10 in the business that I worked for, the one brokerage that I worked for. My goal was to get to the top 10 of them. And what I did, I basically modeled my business after exactly what they were doing. And it wasn't difficult to figure out what they were doing because, it wasn't a very large office and you can go up and talk to them. Or if they weren't available, you'd be able to see what they were doing sort of on a day-to-day basis in terms of marketing and appointments, etc. The problem with me and where I stumbled was I modeled my business after people who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what happened was that same model led to me earning hundreds of thousands of dollars, not the millions. Okay, so it's important that if you're going to model your business after somebody, make sure you're modeling after somebody who is earning a big figure, 7 figures plus. I'm sort of a big proponent of that. And the new program we're launching for 2014 is called Follow Me to a Million. And what we're doing is we're basically interviewing these top producing agents and saying, what do you do in your business? How do you track your numbers? Where does the business come from? And what we're finding from doing the sort of, behind the work scenes with all these realtors is that they're very forthcoming with the information. They understand that they're not in competition with the people they're speaking to. So there's enough business to go around for everybody. And most of the agents we have spoken to at this point in time, there's really only been one who said no, he doesn't want to participate. But everybody else we've spoken to has basically said, yeah, here's what I do, here's the numbers, here's where the business comes from. So don't be shy to go and speak to somebody.
That's very exciting that you're putting that together.
Yeah, I think it's exciting.
So let's then dig a little deeper into the financial facet before we move on. What are the other things we have listed here? Schedule tracking. This is important because once you have the plan, you need to put that into your calendar for the year. And how are these things going to play out? Let's say, for example, you decide you're going to work for sale by owners. There needs to be a plan of how you're going to do that. There also needs to be a regular check-in and how you're going to schedule out the contacts. You've got to really go deeper so that you can estimate when your expenses are going to hit. We all experience this ebb and flow in real estate revenue and earnings, right? And one of the goals is to help you get to the point where you can somewhat even out that ebb and flow. And also, when you know you have a quote-unquote slow period in your market, that you have set yourself up financially to be able to weather that slow period if it exists. So having the next step in your financials to hold them accountable to a calendar, and especially reviewing those numbers. You know, what's working and what isn't working? How often are you looking at that? Now, on a whole plan, I'd say be looking at it quarterly. On a monthly basis, look at that cash flow. And on a weekly basis, even a daily basis, be looking at what's your production in relation to the goal you set for yourself, so that you are constantly dialed in to what's going on with the numbers in your business, so that you can make adjustments when they're timely and not when it's too late or when it's going to be a real uphill battle. Now, in terms of your financial reports, especially when we're new in the business, we're probably wearing all of the hats in our business. It's just us. And so we're responsible for doing that bookkeeping. And maybe you have QuickBooks or some other financial software you're using for that. If you're delegating it to someone else, even if it's a spouse or significant other, it's important to hold yourself or that person accountable to making sure that the previous month's financials are available no later than the 10th day of the following month. You don't want to get so far behind on tracking that you can't make adjustments on the fly that are going to help move the business forward. This next bullet item we have up here I find is a huge one for realtors, and that is tax installments, setting that money aside so that you make sure you pay your taxes. Know what your estimates are going to be, and automatically have that go into an account every time you close a transaction, so that there are no surprises by the time you get to that necessary payment. And then finally, thinking about what do I want to have in reserve and what do I want to put away for savings or my retirement fund. So a lot of people say 6 months reserves is what they'd like to have in the bank. That's what they want to build toward. I know a couple of people who have 1 year or 2 years in reserve so that if something happens, they don't have to worry about the business moving forward. And then savings can include everything from a simple retirement plan to you may have kids in your life that you want to build college funds for. You may be saving for a specific goal item. And all those things need to be accounted for in your financials at the beginning. Because if we don't put them in at the beginning, there's not going to be money for them at the end. That's plain and simple truth. And so if we just back up then to how do I go about coming up with the original financial goal, and this is the key part that leads the rest of it. You've got to look at what are all the things in my life that are at play that I need to account for in terms of what do I need to keep the lights on, pay my mortgage, take care of my household expenses, keep my gym membership, make that trip to Starbucks twice a week that makes me so happy. Get all of those numbers into the equation. A lot of us just stop at the bill paying and don't look forward to those things that create enjoyment in our lives. Get all of the numbers in and get that base number for what you personally, your individual finances, what you need to have a happy quality of life. We're not in this to survive, we're in this to thrive, right? So we want to make sure that we account for all of those things that support our quality of life and not just getting the bills paid.
Yeah, Amy, on that note, it's important to start with the goal, right? We're always big proponents of the goal at Young Realty, and I know McLean International, you're always saying, where do you want to go at the end of the day? If you don't know where you're going, any road is going to get you to that point, okay? And so it's very important to take the time, set the goal, understand where you want to go, but think about everything involved with it. You know, what type of lifestyle do you want to live? What kind of car do you want to drive? What kind of trips do you want to go on? What kind of like what kind of life do you want to live? Like it's you have to have the entire thing planned out in order to understand what you need to do on a daily basis so that you can achieve how you want to live. And it's very important to go through this process. I think this is one of the most important things you have to do before you enter into the new calendar year. And it's ultimately important to understand that you are the business owner. And if you look at any other business outside of real estate, they all have business plans, they all have business goals, they all have business objectives. The problem with most people coming into the business, they used to be employees within those businesses, so they never actually saw that part of the business before. But if you look at it from my angle, where I run Young Realty, and we have business goals all year round. We have quarterly goals, monthly goals, we have all sorts of goals. Most of the agents would never see that, but they have to understand that that is where everything originates from.
Absolutely. And so in considering that, getting all those things figured out up front will then impact. We go from saying, I just want to do better than I did last year to, I've got to hit 42 transactions this year or 112 transactions this year in order to make that goal a reality. And so once we have all of those personal individual desires and obligations figured out and we come up with that monthly number, then we want to take that and put taxes on top of that, because we always forget that tax bracket and that percentage. Once we have that gross number, and just for the sake of using round numbers, let's say you come up with $10,000 a month is the number that you need to walk away with. Then even if you haven't been tracking your business expenses, so you don't have a history, I tell people go ahead and double it. Assume you're going to have 50% expenses. Maybe you'll come in at 47, maybe you'll come in at 52, but for the sake of getting this plan going, let's say 50%, so that you put into your pocket at the end of a month $10,000. So then we're planning for $20,000 a month. Now, what's your average commission? You can look at what you've been selling. If you're a rookie, you're not going to have the benefit of that information. You're going to need to look at, based on the areas that I like to focus on and target, what's an average? And so let's say that your average is a $250,000 sale. And let's be really conservative and say that's paying out an average of 2% commission. We're at $5,000 for an average commission. Now, but depending on what your splits are, you may need to do a lot more with that number. If you're on a traditional 50-50 split with your broker, then maybe you're seeing $2,500 of that. And again, I like to err on the conservative side in terms of revenue and expenses. I want the revenue to be conservative, and I'm always going to figure high on expenses so that at the end of the year I come out always in a more positive position. So let's say we figure out then the average commission is $2,500. Then we need 8 transactions a month. I'm taking 20,000 divided by that 2,500. We need 8 transactions a month to hit that goal. You're each going to need to walk through those numbers yourself. Come up with your monthly, double it for expenses, take your average sales price, take it times the average commission, less whatever broker splits you have, and come up with that commission number, that net commission number that's coming to you. You're going to take that number, Divide it back into your total revenue desired for the month, and you're going to get your transaction goal. All right, so that transaction goal then can drive the rest of a lot of these decisions. So let's talk about that second facet, which is marketing. Where are you going to spend your money and your time? We've got a whole host of areas in this business where we can channel time and resources. And it's important to look at that business and say, okay, sticking with the same example, I'm just going to carry it through the whole webinar. If my goal is 8 transactions a month, how many of those are going to come from my past clients and customers in my sphere of influence? How many of those are going to come from web leads? How many of those are going to come from open houses? Maybe I'm going to do a geographic farm. How many are going to come from that? I start breaking this down. Let's say I look at my history and I figure out that 50% of my business is coming from my past clients and customers and my sphere of influence. That means 4 transactions a month that I'm going to generate from that resource. So how am I going to make that happen? I'm going to need to come up with the marketing that's going to support generating those transactions happening. And so I may look at that, and we'll talk a little bit more later on about a specific plan for customer retention, which is those past clients and customers in your sphere of influence, people who would refer business to you. What am I going to put in their hands? How often are they going to see something from me? Am I going to incorporate phone calls to those folks? And then for those other 4 transactions a month, maybe I'm hitting a geographic farm. Am I doing that by traditional mail? Am I setting up a web presence for that area and getting them on that? Am I conducting events in that geographic farm area, like a dumpster day or a shredding event, to get people out and meeting with me face to face? See how it starts breaking down based on where your business is going to come from. You know, maybe you're really great at a niche rather than a geographic farm. Maybe you're wonderful with first-time home buyers and you love working with them, and so you decide to target them. How are you going to reach out to those people? Are you going to create a web presence again? Are you going to mail to apartment complexes to try to catch those first-time home buyers? Are you going to sponsor first-time home buyer seminars in partnership with a lender or home inspector or other people that might be involved with those first-time home buyers? Now we really start making educated marketing decisions because we're looking at specific goals based on those numbers we came up with, and we can plan to the goal. So take some time to think about where you want that business to come from. And my encouragement to you would be, I'd rather see you do 2 or 3 things really well than do 7 or 8 things equally poorly. So this is especially true in social media. You know, we all hear that we should be on social media, but if you're not doing one very well, there's no point in doing 3 equally poorly. So pick the one where your niche hangs out. Maybe you find out that you're focusing on young urban professionals who tend to be runners or cyclists, and so you focus your energy on setting up things through meetup.com to get to know these people. And you just focus on Meetup and doing a great job with Meetup. Or maybe you have a pretty substantial following of people on Facebook, and that's a social arena where you really feel you can expand your sphere of influence, past clients and customer business. Just focus on Facebook and doing a great job there. Now, we could easily spend a webinar on social media, so I'm not going to take the time today to just talk about that. I really want you to just focus on, pick the one where, you know, if you're focused on business owners and entrepreneurs, maybe LinkedIn is a place for you to be because it's a more businessy environment. Pick one and figure out how to do it well. Emulate what other successful people are doing, as Stephen mentioned earlier. And then once you master one, then look at doing others. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not take the time during this webinar to really promote and encourage to everyone to start using video in your business, whether you use it on your website or through your social media channels. The connection that's happening with video and the results that it's getting for people are so significant that I have to encourage each of you to be looking at that. Whether it's going out and doing a video of the geographic farm areas that you want to serve, or it's blogging on different happenings in your area, I really encourage you to look at incorporating video in your business.
Yeah, so Amy,
let's talk. Go ahead, Stephen.
just before we go on, it's important that everybody realizes that today is about sort of the big picture, right? So it's about planning next year. It's about understanding what happened this year in 2013 and previous years following. So we will do other webinars where it's very specific to how you build Facebook pages or how you do LinkedIn campaigns, etc. But it's important that everybody understands what Amy said here. It's better to do one thing incredibly well, and we're always talking about this marketing wheel, where if you have like 10 spokes in the wheel, and they're all at sort of level 1, you're not going to have a very large wheel. It's going to be very difficult to move around anything. Or if you have, one wheel at 10 and one at 5, it's going to be a very bumpy road. So it's very important that you focus on just one of these aspects, okay, for next year. So if 2014 is going to be sort of your breakout year, then make sure it's breakout with one of these social medias. So if it is Facebook, do Facebook the best of your ability. Make sure you have people helping you and supporting you and guiding you on how to build that page. But don't focus on everything all at the same time, because you just get overwhelmed with it.
Not only do you get overwhelmed, but you start dropping balls, and then it doesn't take long for everything to look really shoddy and not the professional quality that you want to portray.
Right.
So you really shoot yourself in the foot by trying to spread yourself over too many areas. So then let's talk about team growth and development. Now again, remember I said with the team, that could be immediate staff that you're bringing on to help just you, or that could be outsourcing some of your work to a virtual person. Heck, it could be even hiring someone part-time to help make sure that your signs are all up and clean and looking fantastic, and your brochure boxes are stocked if you use them. Whatever you need to support you reaching the level of success that you want to go to, this is what falls into team growth and development. So a lot of people will ask me, Stephen, when they first start considering that they have done as much as they can on their own and they need some help, where do I even know where to start? I'm going to walk you through a really easy process. I want you to carry around with you for a week just a pad of notebook paper, and start by just making a list of all the things top of mind that you know you do in a day. So get your core list started, and then take it with you everywhere you go. And each time you catch yourself doing something that's not on the list, add it. So at the end of the week, you should have a pretty robust list that covers just about everything you're doing. A few things might not get hit in that week's time, but you're going to have a pretty comprehensive list at the end of the week. Once you have that list, what I want you to do is sit down with the list, and you're going to write a couple of things to the side of each item on that list. The first is like versus don't like. So I want you to go through the entire list and just indicate next to each item, is this something I enjoy doing, or is this something I don't like doing? For example, you may love showing buyers, but you may hate processing paperwork. You may love going on the listing appointment, but you hate having to enter it in the MLS and build the virtual tour and whatever else you're doing to get that listing on the market and out to the world. So go through the entire list. I either like it or I don't like it. And then the second column I want you to do next to every item on that list is, how much would I pay somebody else to do this task? What we're after there, is it a high dollar per hour rate, or is it a low dollar per hour rate? If it's stuffing a mailing, could I pay a neighbor kid $8 an hour to get that done for me? You bet I can. If it's negotiating a contract, first of all, I got to find someone who's licensed to do that. Second of all, that's direct revenue impactor, so I'm probably going to have to pay that person a pretty significant hourly rate to get them to negotiate my contracts. At the end of doing this whole list then, I'm going to have next to each thing a dollar per hour rate and whether I like it or don't like it. And I'm going to go through that list, and what I want you to do is find everything that is low dollar that you don't like doing and highlight it. These are your opportunities for first delegation. Get those things off your plate, that are a waste of your time because of the low dollar amount and that you also don't enjoy doing. And guess what? Just because you don't like doing them doesn't mean there aren't people out there that love to do those things. Some people were born to be in a support role and they love the paperwork aspect of the business. That may not be your passion. You may love doing marketing, but the pieces of it you're doing may not be a good hourly rate. And so that would be your second tier of things to look at delegating. Gosh, I enjoy doing this, but it's really not the highest and best use of my time based on the revenue I'm trying to generate in the next year. So I'm going to go ahead and delegate some of those tasks. And that example I gave you earlier of just having someone who can put up and take down signs for you and check your brochure boxes, that could be a retiree, that could be a college student, that could be a host of a number of different people who are happy to get that work at a much lower hourly rate than you're trying to earn for yourself. And so as you look at how do I grow my production and how do I approach the concept of a team, that's a great place to start. Now, in terms of an actual full-time staff team, I will tell you that it always boils down to one of two things that you need first. Either you are so busy with buyer clients that you cannot handle the workload and people are falling off your plate, or you're so bogged down in the paperwork that you can't get out with enough clients to sustain the production that you want. For most people, I'll tell you, it tends to be the administrative side. And so the first hire is typically a full-time administrative person who can help make sure that the listings get serviced, that the transactions get taken from accepted offer to closing with nothing falling through the cracks, that all that paperwork get managed. That's usually the first hire. But sometimes for people with really good systems in place, they may find they need a buyer agent first to help with those leads. So I'll just give you that flow chart, if you will, of a hiring process. Typically admin or a buyer agent, and admin typically happens for the vast majority of people before a buyer agent. And then you start looking at the next tier, and you can always go back to this exercise of how am I spending my time and what is the hourly rate involved there. Every time you go back to that, what you're doing is you're further leveraging yourself to operate at that higher dollar per hour rate and reach the next goal that you want to hit. Stephen, do you have anything to add on team growth and development there?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think most people's questions are, when do they know when to put this into place? Like, sort of, what is the trigger that says, okay, now I need an assistant, or now I need a buyer's agent, or now I need a listings assistant? And I think the trigger for me when I was selling was that when I started dropping the ball on a few things, like I forgot to return the phone call, or I forgot the email, or I forgot to book an appointment, or I missed the brochure handout deadline to go out for the next week type thing. When I started missing deadlines like that, that's when I knew I needed to have somebody in place because I couldn't handle it all on my own.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, that's your number one trigger. So if you're already feeling overwhelmed and you're missing things, you're missing appointments, all that sort of thing, that's probably your number one trigger to say, I need somebody to hire. Okay. And if you can't afford a full-time employee, I started with a virtual assistant. I started with a full-time one, didn't work out, went to a virtual assistant. It was the best thing I ever did because you basically pay for the time that they're actually working, not for the time just sort of sitting around doing nothing. So if you don't think you could have a full-time person there working 40 hours a week for you, then just hire someone virtually until you get to a point where you do need them full-time. And then you can look out for a full-time assistant at that point in time.
That's a great point. You know, just finding that somebody who can take care of signs and courier packages for you, and that it's 8 to 10 hours a week, would free up your time to be focused on your prospecting efforts. Right there, you've come up with a solution based on figuring out what are the tasks that are eating up my time. And I encourage you to go back to that process over and over again as you're looking to grow. People often ask me too, Stephen, about sharing administrative help.
Yep.
And I think if you're using virtual help, that's a great option. It gets a little stickier when you have someone in the office, because if you start to get busy, and so does the person you're sharing with, who gets the hours?
Yeah, that's right.
And so that conversation needs to be had up front before you start sharing that resource. Also, being under different processes may be a challenge for certain administrative people if you're doing things one way and the person you're sharing that admin help with is doing it a completely different way. Some people can flow with that and some can't. They need to have one process. So that's another caution I would give you about sharing. So let's move on then to facet 4, which is sales systems. And we've already talked a little bit about marketing, and your business is going to come from a lot of different areas. What do you do with that business once it comes in? So it's identifying, what do I want the process to be? I get a lead, let's say I get a referral. How am I going to reach out to that referral? Do I start with a telephone call or do I start with an email? May depend on the contact information you've been given. Do I follow up with a handwritten note card? Do I ask that person to be pre-qualified, and do I give them resources to go do that? All of these things are part of the system. And once you have the lead, it's so important to have good systems in place to make sure that those people don't fall through the cracks. And so it's taking the time with any source of business to really work out, how do I want to follow up with these people and make sure that I get them to the finish line. Now, you may have systems for negotiation. You may have systems for ongoing communication. You may have a startup paperwork package. Again, all these things are part of the system, and the more you can document, by the way, the easier it's going to be to delegate it to somebody else. If you try to keep all this up in your beautiful mind and you don't get it out on a checklist and a procedure, and you may be using a contact management system that has built-in action plans, that's great. I would encourage you with any pre-written plan that you review that and make sure there aren't steps missing based on how you want to do your business. You've got to look at the actual service delivery during the time from when they go under contract to the time that they close, and say, how am I making sure during this process that I'm delivering good service? Maybe you send out, for example, a 30-day after listing survey to all of your sellers, just to check in and say, how am I doing? Are you getting what you want? Now, we know the number one thing that we hear complaints about in this business is communication. Once you get that listing, are you staying in contact with that seller? And that's part of the system. Because let's face it, until we leave that closing table, we don't have a transaction. And we've got to take care of them every step along the way. Now, referrals are something that you're after through the entire process. And so looking at those systems and saying, how are ways that I can reach out to people and be asking for more business during the process? Now, I don't advocate that you do this in an obnoxious way. I think it's a subtle part of the process that has to be considered and included, because this is what grows a long-term successful business, and that is having repeat business come back to you and having those people have a high level of trust that they can refer their friends and colleagues to you to get the same level of service. And so how are you going to ask for that? Where are you going to put that in your system? Is it going to be part of your handwritten notes? Is it going to be a PS on your letters that you mail out? Consider it at every point of the sales process. And then the follow-up. We're still in the part of the system prior to closing. How are you staying in touch with people even once they've got an accepted offer? By the way, if nothing's happening, it's still okay to communicate with people. Nothing's happening right now. The simple fact that you're staying in communication and letting them know that there is no news alleviates their concerns and fears. When you leave them in silence, their brains are automatically going to start filling in the gaps with whatever issues and concerns that they already have. So over-communicate as a practice instead of under-communicate. And then what are you doing at closing? We could have a debate on whether or not you want to offer closing gifts. Some people do, some people don't. Everybody has a different process. What's important is that you identify what yours is and you have a system for it. If, for example, you decide that out of every closing you're going to make a donation to a local children's hospital, what is your system to ensure that happens? And then what's your post-closing plan with the office? How are you going to continue to move that forward? You may have closing documentation that you need to do post-closing that goes on file with your office. Make sure you have a system in place to make that happen. And then finally, what's your client retention program? And that really takes us right into your fifth facet, which is customer retention. So this, I believe the statistic out of the National Association of Realtors from this last year's report was that 91% of people say at the time of closing that they would use their same agent again. And the percentage of people that actually do is only 8%. How on earth do we get from 91% all the way down to 8%? It is purely in a lack of follow-up and communication. So what is it that you're going to do to stay in touch with those folks? The reason we're doing that is twofold. Number one, and we've talked about this on prior webinars, number one, to remind them in your business that you're in the business, because 80% of people who enter the real estate business drop off in the first 18 months. If you're on this call, it's because you're part of that 20% and you're in it for longevity. But why should people trust that you're still in the business? So every touch is to remind them that you're still in real estate. The second reason is to let them know that you care about them. And so you can accomplish that in a variety of ways. You may have a monthly e-newsletter that you're going to send out, for example. You may mail a quarterly market update. You may decide to host a client appreciation event once a year. You may offer at the office, you may offer a dumpster day or a paper shredding event day. And by the way, when you do those events, you need to limit each person to the amount of stuff they can bring, because you'd be surprised how much people will load up their cars. So take the time to sit down and say, okay, at minimum, I would encourage you to be in front of people on a monthly basis somehow, and then put them on a quarterly call campaign. They need to hear your voice. And so if I sit down literally with a sheet of paper right now and say, I'm going to plan out my customer retention for 2014, I'm going to write January through December down the left-hand side of the page. And then in each month, I'm going to write what my activity is. Maybe I love giving out pumpkins prior to Halloween. And so in October, I write pumpkin event. Maybe I decide that every St. Patrick's Day, I'm going to send out a reminder to change the batteries in your smoke detector. Maybe I'm going to send out time change reminders. Maybe I want to make sure that I send the quarterly market update in January, April, July, and October. So it's right at the end of each of those quarterly periods that I've got the statistics I can pull and I can give.
There are 8 other callers on the call.
Can give market. Oh, Stephen, I don't know if we got it.
Oh, I think we just had a couple more people come on, that's all. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, thank you. So look at that customer retention program in terms of a holistic approach. Get that whole year planned out. What that also allows you to do then is to budget for those expenses. And so you know now that you're going to have an expense hit in October when you mail a postcard for the pumpkin giveaway, for example. This allows for good planning and allows you to adjust when your business adjusts. So let's talk then about the sixth facet, which is services. And I mentioned this earlier in the call. What are the other things that you might want to offer as a part of your business? For example, maybe you have a staging certification and you'd like to offer that as an additional service that you provide that other people don't. How are you going to market and promote that? Maybe you offer relocation services and you're making sure that every person you communicate with knows that you can help them not only with their local moves, but with finding agents in other markets. And so we put that into the overall business plan. What sort of revenue are we going to anticipate from those sources as a part of our overall production for the coming year? Maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to have an agent-to-agent referral program where I market to the other agents that I've met at conferences all over the place, and I'm going to reach out to them quarterly, and I want that campaign to generate 4 additional sales for me in 2014. Now you can plan your marketing, you can plan your expenditure, and it's something that you can track as a regular part of your business going forward. Now, the 7th facet is technology, and this is hardware and software. So perhaps part of your plan for next year is you want to shift your entire office to be on a Mac platform instead of a PC. Budget for that. How many computers? How many iPads? What are you going to include as a part of the technology in that? And when would you like for that expense to fall? When's it going to be important for you to get that equipment? Maybe 2014 is the year that you decide you're going to move to Top Producer as your contact manager. And so you can call and find out what the expenses are for that and put that into your monthly budget. Plan for the technology to happen. And I would also encourage you to consider having a technology reserve, because we never know when we're going to have that piece of technology that decides to go crazy on us, right? So having that as part of the reserve that we budgeted for back in financial is very important, so that you're not caught off guard when it happens and that you can do the changes that you need to do. And then finally, let's talk about the 8th facet, which is your physical environment. What do you want to do with your office in the coming year that creates the environment for you to be successful? It could be something as simple as you've been operating off this same desk with the sticky drawer for 5 years now, and it's about time you got a desk that really makes you feel powerful and successful when you walk in the door each morning. Maybe it's having a feng shui expert come in and consult you on the space to see if there are things that you can do that way. Whatever your needs are to help you be in an environment that's really motivating to you and that you want to spend time in to make those prospecting calls, put that into your plan for the year to begin with and budget for those expenses. Now, Stephen, we talked earlier, and you said it so beautifully about the importance of setting these goals. What I'm hoping is that you're starting to take a more holistic approach than just getting that transaction number in place, and you're starting to think about all these different facets of your business. This is something that we at McLean do on a regular basis with our clients. September, October, November is when we're doing this, to walk people through the 8 facets and say, okay, what do you want that business to look like next year? If need be, schedule yourself a half or a full day out of the office to do your business planning, to just focus on you and what you want to have happen. Set those goals, and then find someone who can hold you accountable to the things that you're planning to do. This is the most dangerous part of being in real estate. We have no accountability, we have no time clock, we have no boss over our shoulder asking us to turn things in by a deadline. It's all up to us, and so that whether you hire a coach, and we're certainly happy to talk to you about that, or you find a peer partner in the office, find somebody who can hold you accountable to the things that you've set for yourself for the coming year. So let's just recap those facets to make sure everybody's got all 8 of them. You've got the financial piece, and that's the big one. That's the overriding arch that helps us determine everything else. Your second facet, your marketing plan. And remember, we talked about having those silos of business. Make sure that each silo has its own sub-plan as a part of that marketing. Third facet, your staff and team. Maybe you're going to start with a full-time admin person, or maybe you're just going to find someone who can do mailers for you 2 hours a week. Identify what that's going to be. And then your sales systems, facet number 4. What are you going to put in place to ensure that you have smooth transactions from the point of listing through the point of closing? Customer retention, your 5th facet. How are you going to stay in touch with those people after the sale to ensure that they know you're still in the business and that you care about them? 6th facet, what additional services are you going to provide? Your 7th facet, your technology piece. What equipment and what software are you going to plan for in the coming year that help you be successful? You know, maybe you decide you're going to start sending video emails as a part of your marketing campaign, and so you're going to get a BombBomb account. Make sure you put that in your budget. And then finally, your office environment, which we just talked about. What are those things you can do to your physical environment to really set you up for success and put you in the mindset to be successful? You know, it's okay to plan for those things and take care of yourself. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our founder of McLean International and my personal mentor, Linda McLean. She has a wonderful Roadmap to Success campaign that she teaches, and it starts with the mind. You've got to get grounded in your mind. Stay positive, and think in terms of your results. Really visualize what you want to have happen. The millions part of the equation, in Mind, Millions, and Memories, is where we're headed. Mind was the first part, stay positive. Millions. You need to have these financial pieces worked out so that you can fund the quality of life you want, as we talked about earlier. And that's where this business plan really becomes essential to get you to the next level. And then beyond just the business, plan for your memories. This is, how do you want to, at the end of your life, how do you want to look back and remember the time you spent? So that's building a life plan. We haven't even covered those facets. Today was focused on the business plan. But you can do the same thing for a life plan to get you to the next level in your life. Of course, then once we have all those goals and that business plan in place, we need that action and accountability, so important. And one thing that I haven't mentioned yet on this call that's also critical to the success is that you take time for celebration. And that's not just for the big benchmarks. Take the opportunity with the small things to celebrate. Celebrate each transaction. Don't wait until you hit the goal to do the celebrating. It's important that you have that reward system in place, however small it is, to tell yourself, this is what I plan to do, I'm moving forward, and I can feel good about that. Now, I quote Linda all the time. I love to say, what we've been doing today is really going at a 10,000-foot view of the business. We're getting the overall plan. And then when you're back in the trenches and doing the work, you're back down at ground level. Remember, to reach your next level, you've got to take this 10,000-foot view and really plan it out. And that's where perhaps getting a coach is going to be your answer. Getting a peer partner or accountability partner is going to be your answer to make sure that you maintain that perspective. You know, we spend every day amongst that group of trees you see down there in the image. We've got to take the step out and look at the whole forest from time to time to make sure we're on track. So thanks for your time today, everybody. I hope you've got time mapped out right now to do your business planning so that 2014 can be your best year yet.
Well, thanks, Amy. You know, I think you've summed up everything we need to say. The only note I would suggest everybody take the time to think about, especially when planning out an entire year, is think about the difference between desire and expectation. You know, Amy, I speak to a lot of different people, and a lot of people have the desire to earn a lot more money, but they expect a whole lot less out of themselves than what they actually have to do to attain that desire. And the difference with people where they're not getting the results they want, but they really want more, is they don't expect more out of themselves. And most people don't take the time to take the action steps, like to create a business plan that they need to do for 2014. You know, it won't take very long to put into place everything we spoke about today. Maybe if you took like maybe a week, not even a weekend, just to plan your year for next year, it will make a world of difference. So just think about this when you're going through it, the difference between what you desire and what you actually expect out of yourself.
That's a wonderful way to articulate that, Stephen.
So I'm going to there's on the right side of the screen, you can actually type in a question if you want, and we actually have a special guest. I'll see if she's here. Let me unmute her. Let me see if she's here.
Unmuted.
Linda, are you there? Linda, are you there?
Just a second.
No? Okay, so maybe Linda's not there. Maybe Linda's not there.
So we got a feedback.
Okay, well, anyway, so this is question period time. So if anybody has any questions, you can type it in on the right side of the screen. If you have any questions for myself or Amy about creating business plans, strategies, now's the time to ask. No? Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. So thank you, Amy. I appreciate the time today, and we look forward to more training next month with you.
Everybody have a fantastic rest of your day.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Linda.
Sorry, I apologize, you guys. I was having a difficult time getting in.
Okay, sorry about that. So, everyone, we've never actually spoke to Linda this year so far for our training, but Linda McLean is the founder of McLean International. She's the one who's worked closely with me to help build Young Realty, and she obviously helps mentor Amy and all the other coaches that we've been speaking with this year. So welcome, Linda. I appreciate the call today.
Well, thank you, and it would have been my pleasure to be on earlier, but I just couldn't make it. And then, Lord be, I've had some technical problems between my computer and my phone line, so
That's
it's been
okay.
one of those days. But I'm happy to be here, and Amy, you did a great job. I hope that everybody has some good thoughts in how they can, stop and take a look at the business and really make 2014, one of your best years ever.
That's right.
Do you have any questions, Stephen, or does anybody have any questions whatsoever?
Yeah, so I can unmute the line. The problem is it sort of gets muffled with feedback and
Okay.
whatnot. So if somebody has questions, you could type it into on the right side of the screen. There's a little box there. You just got to type in the question, and we'll unmute your line so you can speak to myself or Linda directly. But it's funny every year, Linda. I was telling Amy that everyone has sort of this sort of expectation of more. January is always sort of time for growth, this time for renewal, this time for something different than they had previously. They want to lose weight, they want to start a new diet, they want to make more money, they want to have a different job. So they always have these desires, but by the end of this time of the year, it's always they're getting the same results as they did the year before.
Yeah.
And for me,
Well,
yeah, the challenge is they're not creating the action steps. They're not making the changes they need to make this year to put in place for next year. And that really goes back to desire versus expectation. They desire a lot more for 2014, but they're really expecting the same thing out of themselves every single year because they're not making any changes.
yeah, and it's common. It does happen. So what we all have to do is one step at a time. Is for your business or your personal life, whichever you're working on. If you say, okay, this week I'm going to work on my business plan, then you go through those 8 facets and allow yourself to write down everything that comes to the mind. And then from that big long laundry list, the reason why some people don't move forward is because they look at that long list of things they feel they need to accomplish in the business or they want to accomplish, and it feels overwhelming. That is wherein you've got to have the help or the guidance or support to get clear on what are the priorities, and then narrow that big long laundry list or Christmas list down to 6 items. To say, if I only did these 6 items, what would this look like for my business? And then from that, when we're into the crunch, we really pull it down to 3 items. And see, what we focus on, we find. And we can feel it when you've got a clearly defined path. All of a sudden, it's approachable. You're going, I can see myself doing this. And you get filled with that inner confidence because you truly believe you can do it. And that is what sets the action in motion. And so if people can kind of remember that, just remember those steps, because many before you and behind you can achieve more.
Mm-hmm.
And the key thing is, how do you do it? And it's by making it palatable. And different people can juggle more things. It depends on what's going on in their lives. That's why we have to pull back and say, what am I committed to? What have I committed to? There's this saying, and I don't know if Amy tossed it out. She may or she may not. What we say quite often to clients when clients are really ready, they're eager to take their business to the next level. We say, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So if this is the time of the year to gain clarity and say yes, I'm willing to dedicate the time to create my business plan and my life plan. And then you end up merging the 2 of those together, and then guess what? You do have what we call the roadmap to success. tomorrow I'm so excited. I get on the airplane. I'm coming to Toronto.
That's
Well,
right.
I had to have a plan. I had to be ready. I need to be committed to be at the airport. All these sorts of things. It is no different in any business. And so, okay, obviously I'm passionate about helping people get to the next level. This is an exciting time of the year for us. We are really busy helping clients take those first steps, because sometimes they've had a hard time doing it on their own in the past, and it's exciting for us.
Yeah, and it really is about baby steps. One of my mentors is always saying, don't try to do everything all at the same time. It's literally about baby steps. If you just take that one extra step, don't try to take 10 steps at once. Just take that one step to move you forward towards your goal for 2014, and you'd be much better off than had you not taken that one step at all.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And remember that emotion is our driver. We have to understand emotion is our driver. If we are at a sense of feeling overwhelmed, what happens is the emotion of putting into action doesn't even seem possible, because we're so in that overwhelmed state, because
That's
we
right.
are emotionally.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could go on and on, but
No, we don't have enough time in the day to go on about this topic. So we'll have to have you back on soon, Linda.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so there's no other questions that have come in today, so we'll call it a wrap for today. They've been very patient. They've been on here for over an hour today. It's a long session, but it's an important session. So it's recorded. You guys will have this by the end of the day. Make sure you repeat this over and over and over again. Repetition is key to learning. So it's very important that if you didn't quite get all 8 facets today, make sure you go through it again tomorrow and the day after until you finally have your business plan for 2014 in place in its entirety.
Wonderful. And I'll see you in Toronto. Amy and I will get to see you in Toronto.
Yes, I'll see you very soon, Linda and Amy.
Okay, take care, guys.
Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Bye now.